What's up, guys? Scar here from the Score eSports here with Reginald, old ex-player, current owner of TSM, the biggest League of Legends org brand ever. So, how are you doing right now, Reggie? Your team's currently 2-0 in a playoff setting, about to go into the finals.
I think we're doing good. We're 2-0 right now, but anything can happen. We've been actually I don't think there's ever been a case in our history where we've been reverse sweeped, but I don't want to be going overconfident. It is a new patch, and so we were feeling really uncomfortable with the patch when the patch was issued right before playoffs. We were really nervous, right? Because a lot of our guys put so much work into the regular season, and they're practicing at least 30 to 40% more than the other teams. So they got really burnt out by the end. And then when there was a huge reset, what happened was we fell pretty behind, and everyone came into playoffs on an even level. Like we're going even against everyone in scrims. And then towards the end of it, we started winning more and more and more. And by the end, we are winning like 70, 80%. But it wasn't like that at the start of playoffs.
What do you think about these crazy patches that come in? I know Riot does like mid-season and preseason are supposedly supposed to be the big patches every year, but last year they had the Juggernaut patch where they introduced Gameplank Darius Mordekaiser before Worlds, and there's a running joke that Corki gets buffed before Worlds, and right before playoffs and this Worlds they change 1v2s like extremely, and so now it's like completely different. Like, what's your personal opinion on these types of last-minute changes?
Well, I mean, if you look at it from a fan perspective, right, they have a lot of fun watching LCS and Worlds with new champions. And, it just gets all crazy. You see a bunch of new champions. You see Darius and GP running around, like, just killing everyone. But, like, from an owner perspective and a player perspective, it's honestly really discouraging playing in LCS when there are these major changes, right? Like, I would probably say it's like in order to make, like, an example, I would probably say it's like if you look at like the NBA, right, where they go into like the NBA playoffs, it would be essentially changing like the basketball's weight and changing it to like shooting a bowling ball instead of a basketball. And a lot of my players practice like 10 to 12 hours a day. And, it's not fun practice either because they wake up at like 10, they do VOD review to 10 to 12, and then they scrim from 12 to like 9 p.m. and then they play solo queue. They're pretty much really invested into this, right? And all their hard work essentially goes away. And so from a spectator standpoint, it seems really funny when people like don't know what they're doing and they're playing all these champions. But like at the same time, like from a player standpoint and owner standpoint, I said it was discouraging because they spend their whole entire lives and most of their time practicing, and essentially with just like within like a second without any notice at all, the whole entire game changes. And so that's like I think that's like a big reason why you see a lot of player burnout and why players' careers are so short, right? Like, I mean, what's your opinion on it? You played as a pro, so it sucked for me even when I was playing. So
Yeah, I think right now people are grinding a lot more, and it's getting to the point where I do agree the average pro player life term is 2 to 3 years. So it seems really uncomfortable because you can't really think too much about the future. And I think that sucks because I don't know what kind of applicable skills you can have playing this game and like rotating into another kind of profession. Kind of speaking about the patch a little bit, like, what do you think Riot could do to change it? Do you feel like they should just make big changes, like kind of like preseason, midseason, or just like before the season starts, and then make like really, really small changes leading up? Or do you feel like it's okay to make big changes as long as it's not at a really, really shitty time, like before playoffs or before Worlds, like or before like let's say MSI?
I mean, from my standpoint, like I said, I think it's absolutely fucking ridiculous because you have to think about it from a player standpoint, and the way they changed the patches, they completely changed the way the competitive scene is played. I mean, it's more fun for sure. It encourages more team fights. It makes the game more exciting, but at the same time, from the competitive side, it also actually removes a lot of the strategic value that our players have spent time practicing on. Like, for example, right now, because there are so many team fights and team fights dictate the game more than like rotations, having a good shot caller and having someone that understands the game isn't nearly as valuable. And the reason why we were so dominant this split was because, Doublelift and Bjergsen, they improved their shot calling by a lot. They communicated really well. The rest of our players also communicated really well. It was a huge team effort. And we weren't better players, but as a team, we understood that patch way better. From like a Riot standpoint, they've told us many times that they are only balancing around for the game itself. And I thought it was really interesting that they set a huge precedent to change the competitive side of things right before playoffs, right? Because if you think about it, the patch that they issued mainly changes competitive play more so than solo queue or casual play, because everyone's still playing standard lanes anyways. But whereas in competitive play, you're able to play 2v1 and 2v2, and when you had like a matchup that had a disadvantage, you can just swap out at the right timing and base. But because that is gone, it probably removes the complexity and the strategic side of the game by probably a really, really huge margin. It's a lot more simple now, you know?
What do you think about the critique that people say that the best teams and the best players should just learn to adapt? Because I've heard that even last year when last Worlds came around, people were like, "Oh, it's a new patch." Well, players and teams should just learn to adapt to the new patch because that's what that's what they're getting paid for. Like the best players can always adapt to any situation.
I mean, I think that comment's bullshit, right? Because first off, like from an outside standpoint, it's really easy to say that, but they don't understand how much effort and time the players have to put into learning the game. It's like essentially if you go to school to become like a math teacher, and then all of a sudden you find out like 6 months later that you have to like teach science, otherwise you'll lose your job. That's basically what it is, right? Because I don't want to get into it too much, but the way the system works, if you get relegated, you're done, and because the challenger scene is so weak, if you get relegated, you pretty much lose everything. So team owners are really quick to change out players, and when a patch is issued, like a really great player can all of a sudden be really bad, right? And they have to practice their ass off in order to get really good again by putting the time in. And putting the 10 to 12 hours a day for 7 days a week is not sustainable. There are like a couple exceptions, right? Like Bjergsen, Faker, Doublelift, where they've consistently been really good, but most players they fall off big in this patch. I know in scrims, like a lot of our players were having really difficult problems adjusting to the patch, and the reason why they're able to do that is because they just simply practice and put more time in than everyone else. But the way competitive League of Legends is, it doesn't really reward like knowledge. Like if you do, if you're like a doctor, or I can't list a good example right now, but if you're like a doctor and you practice your profession for 10 years, you become like a master at what you do. But in LCS, it's not rewarding because from a pro player standpoint, you learn something, you're really good at it, and then you basically lose everything that you've learned in the last year. And I mean, League of Legends at its basic, like last hanging and stuff, everyone is proficient at that. So it's all about understanding like how much damage a champion does, what's the max you can do, right? So I mean, to go more into it, you have to a B. So to go more into it, I mean, as a competitive player, when you play on the competitive side of things, it's not as fun as you think. You have to understand all the matchups. So if you play like Diana, you have to understand all 10 matchups that play into Diana. So if like Victor and Cassio and like Aurelion Sol are in meta right now and everyone's playing it, you have to understand how to play Diana into all those champions, right? So when a patch changes, every champion that you play, you need to learn the 10 matchups that each champion goes into. So it's a lot more complex than that, and it's really grindy, and scrims are really stressful because when you're doing bad, everyone's upset, and it's not as fun as like going home after work and playing a game. So I mean, to that comment, I just don't think people they don't have the information to really judge the situation, but they think like playing games and being an esports player is always fun, which is not the case. It is really rewarding to be able to do what you enjoy, but at the same time, they don't understand the the difficulty in like adjusting. And I'm like, me as a player, I hated it. I'm sure all of our players hate it too. We definitely didn't like the huge patch change. And I mean, I sound pretty salty, and I really am.
Being such a big org, since you guys have like great infrastructure and you guys are the biggest org in League, does that mean that, and you guys are having such big problems with this patch, does that mean that other teams also are having like equally bad, if not worse, problems than you guys?
Yeah, so from a big org standpoint, I mean, I think that we run into the same problems every single year. It's just how we put out that fire. We put it out a lot quicker because, I mean, I've invested 6 to 7 years of my life into this, right? Most of my adulthood. And so I like when LCS or when like season two transitioned to LCS, I didn't understand what was happening, but what happened is it's like a half open, half closed system. So, which I don't think works that well because if you get relegated, you lose everything. So basically because I put so much time and invested so much time into it, if I get relegated, I pretty much like lost a lot of the work that I put in. So I'm always on top of it. When we're doing bad, I'm just at the team house. I'm making sure that they go through everything. I'm making sure that our coaching staff, I light a fire under them basically, and I'm always on top of it. That's why we've been able to take top two for so long. But it's every like 3 months, I'm super stressed out all the time, because it is, I mean, it's a scary overall. But like to answer your question from like a lower organization standpoint, like a lot of the investors are buying into buying into esports because they don't understand how to navigate around and they don't understand what to do. It's a lot harder for them, so they're losing millions of dollars by putting money into something that they don't understand. And that's with any investment, right? If you don't understand a space and you put money into it, then you're just basically taking a gamble. But they're seeing the same problems, right? Like they don't understand who to recruit, they don't understand how to improve their players, and they aren't able to like pull in money. So they're just scared, I would say. For me, I'm more hands on about it, so I don't have to worry as much. But uh, it's not like it improves because of how drastic the patches are. Um, I don't necessarily always get better at running my organization. I'm just there's just always a fire lit under me, so it's like 24/7. I guess I'm not explaining it that well. So
No, that's all right. Talk to me about, a little bit about the franchise system and like about like you talked about how teams can't really make revenue. Like, could you kind of expand on that because there's been a lot of talks between all the team owners about franchising and whether or not it's possible. And obviously, everyone's always like, of course, the owners want franchising because they're going to be like so much richer without it. But from what I understand, you have a like kind of a different point to bring up.
well, I mean that's a touchy subject, right? Because I know like the community doesn't like it, and it's a tough subject. But I don't think that's like a huge problem. Did you end up watching Monty's video?
Yes, I did.
So I mean, to put it short, right? It's just an unstable environment overall, and I think that if we wanted like a system where there wasn't franchising, and it was an open system, it would be better. I would prefer like a completely open system or a completely closed off system, because I would say it's really volatile for the organizations and the players. Like I mentioned earlier, when I used the example of like investing into a profession, and you really put focus on it, right? Like if you want to be, a news anchor or whatever it is, you put time into it, you slowly improve through the years, and by the time you're in it for 20 years, you become an absolute star, and you're not nervous in front of camera anymore. I kind of want that to be like my career in esports, where I'm investing into something stable. And I think it's just a combination of the lack of revenue and also how unstable the patches are that really makes things volatile in terms of investment perspective, right? Like from a fan perspective, because a lot of them are going to watch. It's really scary to own an esports team, um, because the patches change a lot, and so when you own a team and the patches change in a really unfavorable way for your players, then there's a higher chance that you'll do bad and you can get relegated. So I've structured TSM in a way where I'm always looking out and I'm always adapting. And that's not necessarily a good thing because it doesn't really create me any comfort or the players any comfort, I would say. But like back to the franchising side of things, a lot of the guys that are investing into this, they are not able to build a stable organization because the board's always moving, right? And they don't understand how to like go towards like the moving target. Whereas for me, because I understand how to go towards it, like roughly, I'm able to constantly be successful. Um, but because like the target's always moving and they can also like lose their spot, it's volatile. So what I would prefer is to see more stable patches, 1 or 2 patches per year that's scheduled around competitive play. I think that would really benefit the players a lot and the orgs a lot. The second thing is, if there's no franchising, I would just like to see, higher pricing and like more infrastructure for the players and for the teams. But I would just prefer something more stable. I don't necessarily think that franchising is the key, but if there was no franchising, then I would want to see a more stable and a better challenger scene. Um, but a huge issue is the revenue opportunities for the teams, and that's like I don't really want to touch on that too much in this interview.
Well, I mean, I want to say thank you for your time. Do you have any last words you want to say? You've been around this scene for a long time, so you have any wisdom you can impart on anyone who watches this interview?
Well, I think that a big part of this interview is, me being really upset about like the patches, and I just hope like players are a lot more receptive. I mean, not players, but fans are a lot more receptive to like teams completely performing like crap after a patch, right? Because if you look at like last year in summer, we did really well at I am Katowice and we took first. And then when we went back, we got completely stomped because the game changed, right? And if you look at this year, it happened exactly to CLG. And the reason why is because the season is so intensive. You're playing 10 to 12 hours a day for 3 months. And then if you take first, it's actually if you take first, it's actually more brutal for you because now you have to practice after the season for 2 weeks. You have to go to MSI, and then after MSI, you're playing on a new patch, so you have to grind it out again. And then when you go into summer, you're just completely burnt out. And then you play in summer, and there's a new patch, and you grind it out again. It's not sustainable. Um, that's why you see like really unstable performances. Like Immortals this year, Huni's really one dimensional, right? So he's really good at playing aggressive champions. And all of a sudden, the meta is about like Gnar and Echo and being tanky, and he's more about like burst champions. He'd probably be a better mid player, to be honest. But anyways, the game changes a lot, and so the guys that put a lot of work in don't necessarily get the benefit to it. CLG burnt out a lot, I could tell. So I actually feel really bad for them because I understand from their point of view. Like they had no break. They went to spring. They were the underdogs. Everyone just made fun of them and gave Hui and 60 a lot of shit. Which I mean, they're not the greatest players, but on the spring split patch, their teamwork was better than everyone else, and it was a team game. So they won and they deserved it. And we're not gonna take any of that away from them. And then when they went to summer, they just, I mean, you saw, right? They got abused, and then they practiced their asses off and start trending upwards by the end. And then a whole other patch just gets launched on them. So I'm here complaining about my conditions of practicing hard. I'm pretty sure CLG is, I would say, like more upset about the change. But if Riot were to issue any changes, I think it should be right after playoffs when all the teams have qualified. So it doesn't become an instance of you guys practice for a whole entire year and then you find out you're actually not playing what you practiced for a whole year. And I just find that like really unacceptable, but I don't really have a say towards this. So
Well, I mean, I also agree with you. I hope that there is more stability in the scene. I'm here with Reginald from TSM. I'm Scarra from the Square eSports. You can find more content online and on our mobile app. Thank you guys. Hope you guys have a nice day.